Donald Trump's administration is going to be about three main things: crime, corruption, and retribution. And we got an update on how quickly and how dangerously all of that is going to happen today with some breaking news about what Donald Trump plans to do on day one of his administration. But it's not just what Donald Trump plans to do on day one of his administration. What he did days leading up to his administration is really what shouldn't confuse us, but is shocking us the most. And we are going to get into all of that in the posts that Donald Trump has made that are kind of backfiring on him at this point. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and it really means the world to me. Now, like I said, Donald Trump's administration, corruption, crime, retribution, but of course, number one in all of those is corruption to serve Donald Trump. And that's why we saw him make a ridiculous post that we are going to get into. But before we do, I want to check out Rachel Maddow, who is detailing what Donald Trump is planning to do after he is sworn in.
And the moving of the inaugural ceremonies inside the Capitol Rotunda. Trump is a huge fan of stagecraft. It's like a huge part of his message. It's maybe one of the more substantive parts of what he does. What do you think about the change in venue?
Yeah, the move from the Capitol to the Capital One Arena is like it's a real downgrade. No casting aspersions on the Capital One Arena, but I don't know. I mean, it's not good news for anybody who is a fan of Trump or who wanted to support the new administration, who is coming to Washington. You know, people are already there. And have traveled from all over the place and can read the weather forecast and knew it was going to be cold. I do think it kind of puts a damper on the whole manly man administration thing, which they've been really trying to telegraph. I mean, I don't know that we've ever had confirmation hearings before an inauguration where a potential cabinet nominee was bragging about the number of push-ups he did that morning. And he was bragging about it because he was asked by a senator how many push-ups he can do. I mean, they really have been leaning into this idea of Mark Zuckerberg's, to use Mark Zuckerberg's phrase, masculine energy, and this being, you know, the manliest, physically toughest administration ever. And we're getting back to sort of caveman style American machismo. And then simultaneously for them to say, and we don't want Trump to be cold, so we have to do it inside. I think it undercuts their message a little bit. I'm surprised they didn't try to come up with some other pretext, but they're just doing it because of the cold.
Yeah, they have been saying today that Donald Trump cares about the health of the horses that law enforcement often sits atop during inaugural ceremonies, which is, I think, the first time Donald Trump has expressed any equine preferences. But we'll move on from that, Rachel. I have to ask you about the kind of big question around the resistance, as it was expressed most publicly the day after Trump's inauguration. There was that huge women's march. There's no such thing planned for January 21st, 2025. And I sort of wonder, as you think about that movement and where we are now, how you're reading it, how you're reading the landscape.
Well, I mean, there is going to be the People's March is going to be tomorrow in Washington, and there's going to be dozens of those all over, if not hundreds of those all around the country. So there's going to be smaller scale stuff. I think some of what's going on is what everybody in the kind of punditocracy is talking about, which is that people are scared and exhausted. But I also think that people are being strategic, knowing that the Trump administration is going to be here for 4 years and then we'll see. Knowing that those early demonstrations were important, I think, in terms of establishing a sense for Trump that there was going to be something he was going to have to push against, establishing among those the majority of the country who didn't vote for Trump that they were not alone and that the country still stood for things other than Trumpism. I think that was all important, but I think those sort of those stakes were sort of planted then, and I'm not sure that everybody feels like the thing that's needed right now is mass demonstration in the street in protest of his inauguration. Now, if there are mass deportation efforts and mass anti-immigrant raids, and they are carried out in the spirit that Stephen Miller and Tom Homan and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have been talking about for the last few months. And those start, as is being reported today in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere, those start within hours of the inaugural. I think that we are going to see resistance to those things. I think we are going to see communities react to households and businesses being raided and families being torn apart and them trying to build camps to put people in and all of that stuff they say they're going to do, that's going to start, according to recent reporting, within 24 hours of the swearing in. And I think that sort of reactive demonstration we should probably count on. And I think the cities where they're threatening these deportation actions in the first 24 hours, whether it's Chicago or New York or LA or Miami or Denver or wherever else they're going to try, I think there is going to be a local reaction. I don't know how well organized or visceral it's going to be, but that could potentially be a big deal. And I think that we should be ready, again, sort of ready for anything in terms of what that turns into.
Yeah, just to put a finer point on that. So the Wall Street Journal is reporting tonight that the administration, the incoming Trump administration, is planning to start large-scale deportations on Tuesday, deploying as many as 200 ICE officers to Chicago. I just want to say, just for people who aren't familiar with the number of officers it takes to engage in large-scale raids, 200 officers seems like a lot. But Marco Rubio is saying they want to deport 10, 20, 30 million undocumented people from this country. That will require a redeployment of federal officers, the scale of which we have not seen in my lifetime, So right. I think there's also the truism of the Trump years, which is, there is a lot of talk that is very pitched and it is intended to invoke fear, and oftentimes it's quite successful. And it's not to minimize those affected by a 200-person ICE raid in the city of Chicago. But Donald Trump's ability to actually execute on the mass deportations he's promised is an open question. And I think within that, there is a lot of opportunity for resistance, the kind of which you just outlined, Rachel.
And I think he's also picking a fight. I mean, I think that there's a reason that he's picking all of the cities that they're sort of either floating or that are being reported or possibilities for these early deportation actions tend to be blue cities in blue states or blue cities in red states. And I think they're looking for a reaction. They're picking a fight. They want to go into places that have pro-immigrant sentiment and then have lots of immigrants. And I think they want to do things in a performatively brutal way because they are hoping to shock and cow people in this country and to pick fights. And I think they're looking forward to the fights that they provoke. And, that's playing with fire in terms of our civic fabric. It's also playing with fire in terms of people potentially getting hurt. But I think that's what they've wanted for a very long time. I think that's Stephen Miller's vision of the sort of accelerationist race conflict that he has been looking for since he was a teenager. And they're going to try to start it. And Americans are going to have to decide both what our values are in this context, but also what is constructive and protective and nonviolent and helpful against, I think, an administration that right from the outset is going to be pushing to see what it can get away with and what fights it can start that it can turn to its own purposes.
So obviously, Rachel Maddow there having to poke a little bit of fun at Donald Trump for being too afraid of the cold, had to move things inside. Not very strong of you. Donald MAGA always wants to talk about this masculine energy and how tough they are, but afraid of a little bit of cold. I think other presidents have had colder temperatures, Donald. I think what you're really worried about is your crowd size there. But the important takeaway from what Rachel Maddow was discussing is Donald Trump's plans for a raid on Chicago the day after he is sworn in, and plans of those mass-scale raids in cities all across the country with mayors and local and state officials who have already said they will be pushing back against Donald Trump. And these really just criminal, frankly, mass deportations that he is going to try to move forward with. And we have to, of course, be calling them out and pointing out how they are completely antithetical to the actual policy positions Donald Trump claims to have to lower costs, to make our economy boom. Donald Trump will be not only ripping families apart in an immoral fashion, but his racially profiling cops are certainly going to rip out people from communities who aren't here illegally as they disrupt an economy that is built off immigration, something that is incredibly deflationary. To talk about Donald Trump's favorite example in Springfield, Ohio, the reason we saw such mass immigration to that city is because it was being encouraged by the business leaders who saw their town revitalized because of that immigration. But we all know this to be true. But what's a little bit shocking is how quickly Donald Trump wants to do it. And what isn't shocking, but kind of still is what Donald Trump is doing before that. Like I said, in 2 posts that I want to check out right here. The first post from Donald Trump reads, "My new official Trump meme is here. It is time to celebrate everything we stand for. Winning. Join my very special Trump community. Get your Trump now. Go to gettrumpmemes.com. Have fun." The second, more ominous post reads, "Coming up, the most important weekend plus in American history. Enjoy. Donald J. Trump." So Donald Trump is pulling off his final, well, probably not his final scam in money grab. Certainly his final scam in money grab as a private citizen. There's going to be a lot of funneling dollars into Donald Trump's businesses while he's president. That's why he's doing the whole thing. But it's crazy that this is his focus right before he's about to be sworn in, is selling a meme coin for a cash grab to take more money from his supporters. This is what Donald Trump is focused on. Taking your money, if you're a Donald Trump supporter. I don't think you're watching this if you're a Donald Trump supporter. And at the same time, decimating our economy with a mass deportation plan that, again, is not only immoral and should be illegal, but runs counter to everything Donald Trump wants to achieve in terms of lowering costs in his administration. It is going to completely backfire, and his sole focus being on this plan, this mass deportation plan, is going to blow up in his face. And we're going to be talking about that every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.